two serial killers, William Hare and William Burke, set up an illustrious business by killing 16 people in Edinburgh, and they sold the bodies to anatomists because there was a shortage of cadavers. Now, with Edinburgh being the leading European centre for anatomical study, Scottish law prescribed that corpses used for medical research could only come from people who died in prison, or they could come from orphanages, or foundlings, or people that died in prison, and suicide victims. Now, body snatchers raided cemeteries at night, which lead to inventive methods of the rich and the affluent to prevent their king from being resurrected. But Burke and Hare provided a fresh supply of bodies to anatomists who bought them for £7 each. The Greeks believed that their gods were immortal, and the souls of the dead might either dwell in Hades, which was the underworld, or if they'd led an exceptionally exemplary life, then they could enjoy the utopian setting of the Elysian fields. Yet wherever the soul may find itself after death, the human body is doomed to decay. The science of decaying flesh is called taphonomy, and on a so-called body farm, the body still has a meaningful life, at least for a while. During my time in the South African Police, we had a brilliant member on our team, Inspector Vivian Bealt. In the 1990s, we did not have the luxury of a variety of forensics experts to assist our crime scenes, and at the rate that we were finding and processing bodies, especially during Moses Sithole, the Atteridgeville serial killer's investigation, we needed expertise. And as I have mentioned before, the progression of Moses Sithole's modus operandi only surfaced once we placed the crime scene photographs in the order of death and not in the order that we found them. Despite what is depicted on television series, it is not that easy for pathologists to determine the time and the date of death, especially when a body is decomposed. Inspector Vivian Bealt, first attached to the Criminal Records Centre and a crime scene analyst, taught himself the science of entomology and victim identification, and he forged cooperation with academics in these fields. Vivian was later attached to the Forensic Science Laboratory. He was an invaluable asset to us. I remember quite often on a crime scene I would sit next to Vivian, collecting flies, larvae and maggots and other little beetles from the body. With Vaseline rubbed around our noses and wearing a medical face mask to subdue the putrid smell of the decomposing flesh. I always carried surgical gloves in my handbag, as well as paper bags and little plastic containers in case we needed them on a crime scene. Now, the concept of a body farm was first developed by Professor William Bass in 1977, when he made a very peculiar discovery. Asked to detent a fresh body in a grave, he noticed that the flesh around the bullet wound in the skull was still rosy pink, but this body was dressed in the uniform of a Confederate soldier. It turned out that the soldier had been killed at the Battle of Nashville in 1864. He was buried in a cast iron casket that was originally airtight. Grave robbers opened it, but they found nothing of value and they reburied the body on top of the casket. Professor Bass knew that the technology regarding the influence of the environment and certain circumstances would have on a body was severely lacking, and therefore he founded the first body farm, officially known as the University of Tennessee Anthropological Research Facility. High fences and no energy notices kept the macabre curious out. This is a research center for scientists. More body farms have popped up all over the world, including in Australia, Canada, and the Netherlands. A body farm is an outdoor research laboratory where the decomposition process of bodies under different circumstances are observed and noticed. The research data is very valuable for determining the date and time of death of the victim, identifying the victim, determining the cause of death, and of course what happened to the body after death. For example, was it transported, frozen, drowned, or burnt? More accurate conclusions can be drawn from bodies found in circumstances similar to those in the simulated scenes on the body farm, which supports testimony in court. The time of death did not only serve me well in composing the profile of the Atteridgeville serial killer. But it can also be compared to a suspect's alibi, especially when only a few hours are at stake. Now, some perpetrators try to conceal the time of death by spraying the body with chemicals or keeping it in a freezer until it is safe to dispose of it. I remember a case where we found a body of an elderly male in a bath and the tap water was still running. The body had been stabbed with a pair of scissors multiple times, and the murder was therefore clearly anger motivated and executed while the victim was in a vulnerable position in the bath. Now, the victim's married lover arrived a little later that morning, shocked to find him already dead, and he realized he would be a suspect if he was noticed on the premises at the time of that morning, and his wife would be very suspicious and find out that he was having an affair. So he turned on the taps to confuse the time of death, and he left the scene. We traced and questioned him, determined he was not the killer, although he did tamper with the evidence. And eventually we arrested the real killer, who had been killing several gay older men to whom he'd provided sexual services, which explained the anger motivation. Concealing a murder is a very complicated process, wrought with pitfalls. One of the most bizarre that I encountered was an attempt of one of South African female murderers who kept the body of her husband in a freezer for a while, and then she transported it to the countryside, chopped it up and burnt it. And when she discovered that bodies take a very long time to burn to ashes unless they are incinerated, she tried to feed the rest of the remains to the cows in the pasture. Now, cows are herbivores, so the human remains were discovered and identified. The recent case of Thabo Bester, who smuggled a dead body of Katlego Bereng into his prison cell and set it alight to facilitate his escape, also backfired. Pathologists can usually give an accurate estimate time of death when a body is fresh. In the hours after death, they rely on indications of algo mortis, that's body temperature, rigor mortis, that is stiffness, and liver mortis, settling of the blood to determine the actual time or approximate time of death. But since the process of decomposition is in motion or in an advanced state, it becomes very, very complicated. In the 1990s, Vivian considered insects to be the best little detectives who arrived on a crime scene long before we did. He learned from Dr. Mervyn Mansell, extraordinary professor at the Department of Zoology and Entomology at the University of Pretoria, who attended some of our crime scenes and provided on-the-spot training for us. However, an insect's life can differ from one location to another location. Technology had advanced since Vivian was processing crime scenes, and scientists are now focused on gathering bacteria and studying microbes. Once the body's immune system shuts down, microorganisms in the gut start multiplying, and they're rapid consuming nutrients, literally eating the body from the inside out, which causes the gases that makes the body bloat. During the first stage of decomposition, the body then bloats, swells, and emits a putrid stench due to the buildup of the gases. Regarding the insect activity, a dead body will initially attract ants. Then the flesh bursts due to the swelling, attracting the flies who will lay eggs in all the orifices. Maggots breed and begin to devour the flesh. In the second stage, the body fluids that have been leaking due to the maggot activity attract another type of fly. Every type of fly tells a different story, just as different types of microbes tell different stories. The last phase of decomposition is total dehydration, when only the hair, skeleton, and the sinews remain. Small beetles infest the body, laying eggs, and the larva completes the decomposition process. There are even fly larvae who can gnaw through a coffin buried in the ground. And besides collecting insects, we were also taught to collect soil samples. So a body farm is literally a hive of activity, populated by forensic biologists, zoologists, entomologists, chemists, anthropologists, archaeologists, and pathologists, observing the bodies under simulated death and decaying circumstances. Bodies are kept in freezers, burnt, submerged into dams and lakes, buried in different types of soil, kept in the boots of cars, encased in cement, hanged from trees, thrown into septic tanks, sprayed with chemicals, and kept indoors with air conditions on. They are dismembered, they are naked, they are clothed, they are wrapped in plastic. They are exposed to rain, sunshine, humidity, snow, and diverse weather conditions. Their temperatures are constantly monitored. Photographs are taken and samples are taken and recorded, and so a database is established. Yet besides the external circumstances a body is subjected to, certain internal nuances that cannot be duplicated on a body farm takes place, such as bacteria that is already in the body, antibiotics, diabetes, or if the person was a vegetarian. According to scientific research at the University of Tennessee, cocaine present in the body may speed up the maggot activity, while barbiturates will slow it down. The science is evolving. It almost sounds like a movie set where a director is needed to orchestrate the farm, but a body farm is certainly not a movie scene. Legislation and hygiene are applicable. Most countries have legislation that regulate human tissue and the transportation of human bodies. Dr. Nandipa Magudumana, as a medical practitioner, must have been aware of this when she allegedly assisted her lover Thabo Bester's escape by procuring bodies from hospitals and tried to retrieve the burned body of Katlego Bereng from the morgue. Some people donate their bodies to science for medical students to practice on the cadavers. But would they donate their mortal remains to be experimented on in a body farm? Legislation allows unclaimed bodies to be used for scientific purposes. Some religious and cultural groups may object, and would a community or farmers be happy with a body farm next to them in that vicinity? So there are certain ethical questions to be raised. Yet more than 500 people have donated their bodies to a body farm in Australia, and thousands of people are card-carrying members on a waiting list for the American body farms. Ironically, Hare turned king's evidence against Burke, who was then convicted and hanged, and his corpse was dissected and his skeleton displayed at the Anatomical Museum of the Edinburgh Medical School, where it still remains today. If you like our videos, please give us your thumbs up, subscribe, and if you'd like to become part of our Patreon community, then please follow and link our QR link. Thank you.